The following is a presentation of the Radio Misfits Podcast Network.
From the birthplace of modern winemaking, Sonoma, California, welcome to The Winemakers. Local experts Sam Couturi, Bart Hansen, and Brian Casey, along with host John Myers, invite you to listen in as they discuss all facets of winemaking. So sit back, pour yourself a glass, and let's hear what the guys have to say this week.
How long has it been since you've done the pour? Oh,
I poured wine yesterday.
All right.
not on microphone.
We'll hit it.
Right on your own glass.
Nice pour. Pedroncelli pour. So, Jim, good morning. We're up in Geyserville, actually, right? Legally?
Right here in Geyserville.
Talk right into that microphone, my friend. And
The suburbs of Geyserville.
Yeah.
You know,
The metropolis of Geyserville.
We'll be driving around Sonoma County. My wife will say, "What town is this?" And I'm like, "This is unincorporated Sonoma County."
Right.
And she's like, "But I don't understand. What is it?" And I said,
This is unincorporated Sonoma
Where
County.
does their mail go? And I said, "Well, at the particular place, this is probably Petaluma. Here, it's probably Geyserville, right?"
Yeah. We have our own post office in Geyserville.
Right. Yeah.
well, hey, we are the Winemakers. Welcome, everybody. I'm John Myers with Brian Casey, Bart Hansen, Sam Couturi. Wow, full crew today. And Jim Pedroncelli, thank you so much for being such a great friend of Bart's over the years. And
We've only this is the first time we've met.
Okay, so how do you guys
So for
get in
me,
the
how this
family?
goes is that there's this gentleman, Ed St. John, and Ed was a salesperson.
As in Edmund?
No.
Different, okay.
Just Ed St. John.
Okay.
Ed was a salesman, and he and Mike Lee were good friends. They were more sparring partners, I would say, than
Kenwood?
anything else at Kenwood.
Okay, great.
And Mike would beat up Ed on price of whatever it was he was buying. And my classic line that Ed said to Mike one time in front of all of us said, "Mike," he goes, "do you like the products that I sell you?" And Mike said, "Of course, that's why we're doing business." And Ed says, "Well, then, Mike, you need to allow the company that sells you the things you want to make enough money so they can stay in business to sell you the things that you want."
Hey.
And then I think Mike still continued to beat him up, So at any rate, so that's how I knew Ed. And then at Benziger, Ed also was our sold stuff to us, and he and Terry Nolan worked together at Alexander Valley Vineyards. So there was a connection there. So and then I've met Julie over the years. And so we're here because we're at an iconic winery here in Sonoma County. Bonded Winery 113.
Yeah, isn't that amazing? What year would that have been?
Oh, that was pre-prohibition numbering.
1927, according to the label.
Excellent.
That's when our family started, but they used a number that had been given before Prohibition. Well, back when they started with number 1, which I think was in Cucamonga, actually, and then they just kind of sequenced it, and we were at number 113, and then we assumed that number when my father bought
What history
the
here.
property. Yeah.
We were out in the fields this morning across the street, and everything is just looking beautiful, but late.
Very late.
What's happening with the harvest up here? Looking.
Just late. It's just a late start. We had so much winter, rain, and cold, and so everything got started a little slower. And so,
Are you like a month behind, maybe?
Oh
in
yeah, I would
duration
say about a
and
month
growing
from what the vineyard managers
Yeah.
said. So yeah, but sometimes the slow ripening is not bad. You get more flavor in the grapes.
Right.
Sam, what's Phil stewing about this morning? Anything?
I mean, how much time do we have, John? No, I think everybody's in a hurry up and wait kind of mode. There's vineyard projects, development projects and replants and stuff going on, but thinning is happening. Some shoot positioning is happening, but it's a whole lot of, seeing what we can do to, make sure that crop is balanced and all at the same benchmark as far as where it is in the ripening curve.
Yeah, we're starting late, so there's on the other side there's going to be an end date, and so you need to get there at this point as best you can, right?
And it probably behooves us to get there sooner than later.
Right.
for lots of reasons.
Yeah. Well, can we, Jim, kind of start it when your family first purchased this piece of property? I think 1927.
Right, 1927, right in the middle of Prohibition time. Which
Kind of an odd time to purchase a vineyard.
actually was good opportunity because who was going to buy a winery in Prohibition
The market
time?
was down.
Right.
Definitely.
Yeah.
So they purchased at that time. It had been an existing winery, but it closed down during Prohibition.
Yeah, and I just learned that recently. So they were actually making wine off of this property before your father took it over. And
Yes.
and so when were they? What was the first year that they were originally making wine on this property?
As far as we could tell, it goes back to 1904. It was actually owned by a grocery owner out of San Francisco, and I guess they used that to supply wines to their customers.
Right.
And of course, everything kind of fell apart with Prohibition, so that was.
Because I think at the time there was 13 different wineries in this area during Prohibition, and then coming out of it, it was you guys and Fry.
That's just about it. But
Yeah.
everybody in the beginning used to be a home winemaker basically, and then it changed with Prohibition.
So the business model at first was grow grapes and sell them to friends, neighbors, relatives, whoever would buy the grapes, and then make your own churches.
What was the limit you could make? 500 gallons?
No, 200 gallons.
200 gallons. Okay.
Which, if you think of, is
still a lot of wine.
it's about 3.5 barrels, something like that. So
Well, and wasn't it per person per household? So if you had 2 adults living in the house, couldn't you?
Well,
double that?
I'm not sure about it. I think it was household, but it could have been.
Yeah. It might have just been something.
well, and I don't know.
Maybe
who
that was just
actually-
something that your family said to themselves as they made more wine than they were allowed to.
Well, and who was coming around knocking on doors, checking that stuff anyway? Was there any fear of someone coming and seeing that
The
you were making more
revenuers?
wine?
Elliot Ness.
Well, I think they were more concerned with whiskey people running stills. In fact, across the street there was a still that was in operation. Wasn't involved with the family, but it was operating.
Moonshine.
Until-
California moonshine.
Until the revenuers got them. Yeah.
That's historical.
And so what was the end of Prohibition? What year was that?
That was 1933. I think it was actually December of 33. So
December 5th or
Repeal,
7th.
repeal day.
Yeah, 5th, repeal day.
We try and celebrate that every
We
year.
celebrate all month long.
sure. Every year.
This year we should plan ahead and actually throw a party as well.
Let's not get off brand.
So your father, I think, came here from Italy, and your mom, both from generally the same area in Italy. They lived not too far apart, but didn't know each other back in the home country. Came here. I think your dad was working on railroads.
Right. Yes.
Your mom's family was in the sort of the boarding house business, so they were putting people up. They somehow met. I don't know if you even know how they met for the first time.
Actually, I do not, but
And he's a little frightened.
yeah, it's more history than I need. But anyway, yes, very, very much so that they met up in. My father was in Dunsmuir, and mother was in Reading, and especially with the boarding house type of culture, then it was a natural to get together. So,
Yeah. And then why did they decide on this?
Well, I want to
piece
know
of
what part
property?
of Italy, though.
Good question.
they were northern Italy, near Lake Como. It was probably
way northern
the
Italy.
most
Ooh, yeah.
the most recognized
Nice.
area, but even further north towards the Swiss border. So. It was up in the mountains. Not a lot of grapes up there, so that
Alto
it
Adige.
changed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I know because my family came from Switzerland, the Italian-speaking part of Switzerland, to Asti, to the Italian-Swiss colony. So curious. Seems like from different parts of Italy, people ended up in different, parts of California, right?
Yes, I think a lot of it was. I think the landscape here was vineyard and natural hillsides, and so lend itself to
Felt like home.
A good place to grow grapes and make wine. So,
Yeah. So the plan then sort of changed after Prohibition, because now you could actually make wine, but I don't think you guys were making wine to sell initially, right?
Not during Prohibition, no.
No, and then even immediately after?
Started in, I think we got in 1935, we've got the permit from the, BATF, TTB, or
Right.
whatever they called it then.
Right.
But so to restart and start production.
And what kind of grapes were on this property at the beginning?
Well, typical grapes were, the key probably was Zinfandel. Then there was Carignan, Petit Syrah, and I remember a little bit of Alicante was growing here. All red varieties, and not necessarily planted distinctively in each own block. A lot of times they would be intermingled within the vineyard.
I was always curious, and Sam, you might be able to answer this too. When you were planting like that, when you had true field blends in the vineyard, everything doesn't ripen at the same time, right?
True, but mostly fairly close. I guess maybe they would, if it was strictly field blend, they would have to harvest them all at the same time. If they were separate, maybe more separate, they would go row by row.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and this is not based on necessarily like science, but it seems like those field blends were thrown together or worked together because they did sort of like make up for each other's ripening curves, and what one lacked, another one brought. You have Alicante out there that's going to bring color with the the Petit Syrah, and you have the Carignan to bring that
on, my friend.
to sort of fill out some of the mid range and kind of make up for the wildness of Zinfandel.
And there's also been this discussion. I'm curious if you have any experience or agree or disagree, or just to bring it up, is that the field blends were different kind of regionally. So the field blends that they found in Russian River were different than Dry Creek or Alexander Valley, because they did understand
Hill Ranch and
right,
Bedrock,
and they did understand that their weather, what they were trying to make up for it. So,
well, and you also have to remember that they weren't necessarily all planted at the same time. You go and you plant stuff, and some vines don't make it, and you go and you replace it with something else, right?
Right.
And so the ages of those vineyards probably, it's not like everything was planted in 1865 period and move on from there. It's like, as just like now, as a vine fails, it gets hit by a tractor, or the horse with the plow or whatever, you go and you replace it with something else. So I think those field blends evolved as the winemakers were figuring it out.
Yeah, and probably some choices. Some winemakers like the Zinfandel and a little bit more than the Petit Syrah, and they try to balance them out. So.
And I also don't know, like, they were trying to make really good wine, but there wasn't the pressure to do it as there is now, or it wasn't as big of an
You mean
industry.
Robert Parker wasn't around back then?
There was nobody directing what they thought was good.
Yeah.
And think about the way that the wine was. We talked about this before when we got here, before we started recording, that you guys bottled wine here for the first time in the 40s or late 40s or something?
Late 40s, yeah.
Before that, every drop of wine left here in a barrel. So you'd want something with a ton of tannin and acid that's going to survive being in a barrel in a grocery store in San Francisco that's half full for a week. Those things that what constituted good wine and the needs of like the wine when it left here was totally different than it is now, right?
Well, and it was also a continuation of home winemaking, really.
Right,
So
right.
they were the people that really drank the wine early on were the mostly Italian descendants, and they drank some hearty wine.
Right.
And,
And there was no ceremony about it. They just drank wine.
Because it was part of it was just part of life.
Yeah, I mean, that's what the California wine industry has done to itself, is that for a time period, that wasn't the way it was. It was like, oh, open this bottle on a special day. And meanwhile, people are wondering why, bottles of wine aren't getting consumed, right?
Because they're waiting for that moment.
Right. Don't open a bottle.
Tap the barrel, pour yourself a glass, and then when the barrel's gone, go back up to Geyserville and get another barrel.
There you go.
yeah.
Well, and I'm assuming that there was no French oak barrels around at that time. So what are you storing this juice in?
Well, early on with some barrels, a lot of times you got them from whiskey companies, old used whiskey barrels.
Yeah.
It's a trend now too.
Right. Yeah.
But so was the small lots were in small barrels like that, and of course the larger containers were redwood tanks.
Do you guys still have some redwood tanks?
We actually still have a few. We don't use them anymore. We kind of look at.
It has to be interesting what that imparts in terms of taste from a redwood.
Right. Although usually it wasn't like you got a new redwood tank every year. They were older tanks, and there wasn't a lot of extract off of the wood, so you didn't really get a flavor out of it. It was maybe more true to the grape than it was to the oak aging.
And I, from what I've understood, the reason why they got away from redwood, although some people have always used redwood, out there, the Bedrock folks and Joel Peterson, but redwood was hard. Tony Coturri. Redwood was hard to take care of because it was soft. It's a soft wood. Oak was hard, and more dense, and so it was easier to maintain. That was part of the reason why they changed over. And then they probably were running out of redwood trees also, because there's, all those old tanks were old growth redwood. Like they're perfect. If Kenwood, we used to have a barn full of old redwood that they had milled down, and you couldn't find a defect in it,
Yeah.
So.
And so, what were you doing? You have two sisters and an older brother. You're the baby, I guess.
Right.
And
got
so,
all the attention. Yeah.
Right. For better or worse. So, growing up on a piece of property like this, I was thinking about this the other day. Back then, was there people that came up from Southern California or Mexico to pick grapes at that time, or was it more like a family thing where you and your siblings were out there picking grapes?
Well, somewhat as much as possible for the family to do the work. But during the harvest, there was always migrant people, not necessarily Hispanic, but there were in the early days there were a lot of Italian workers around, and they would do the day-to-day work, but also involved in the harvest too. Yeah. The harvests weren't as large either, so it wasn't like today that larger amounts.
Right. Yeah, because what percentage in this general area of Dry Creek was planted to grape as opposed to, we were just mentioning peaches earlier, or prunes, or other types of agriculture?
Mostly, especially following during the Prohibition time and in following shortly, it was mostly into prunes in the valley floor, and the hillside still had the grapes, but the majority was really in prunes, some pears, apples. But
your peach tree outside is looking pretty good.
Yeah, they did well here.
Your father planted that?
Yeah, it goes back into that time frame. Yeah. So
I can remember there being orchards on 101 in Geyserville, like right there where we got off. Like, as a child, I can remember it not being just vines. It was more than that. So it was around for a while.
I feel like that even started to happen in my lifetime.
Yeah,
like in the 80s was really when a lot of those orchards started getting pulled out. Grapevines going in.
Yeah, and that would go along with the business. Pre-80s, the wine business was still pretty small, and there weren't a lot of you guys.
Right. So, and especially it was economics too. Growing prunes didn't have a lot of return.
Right.
And then when grapes got more popular, then of course, you converted to Chardonnay or something. Yeah.
Where did all those prunes go to? Because Sonoma Valley was lots of prune. All of like the San Giacomos were doing. I mean, what was where were we using all these prunes in America? Up until this we were a very regular country. Like, what was going on?
I guess there's alternatives now.
I guess.
Right. I know you do see prune juice once in a while on the
it's
shelves
like
at
the prune
store,
market is definitely not what it used to be for whatever reason.
Yeah.
I mean, Sam, you have a legitimate point. My friend George worked for the California Peach Tree Canning Peach organization when he first graduated college, and he worked somewhere over in northern Sacramento Valley, and he'd go, "Yeah, come on over," and he goes, "We'll go get some chocolate covered prunes." And so there was a store.
Tempt me with a good time.
It was like a prune tasting store.
Wine tasting seems more appealing than prune tasting.
There might be a podcast there, Sam. So go ahead.
So I'm wondering. So Jim, at what point do you? The whole thing about selling the barrels, sort of, and I don't think people understand that you used to just sell the barrels to the store, and then at what point do you start putting them into jugs, because they weren't 750 ml bottles at first, and then did they have labels on them at first?
Well, in the beginning, it was still the barrels, and in fact, the stores could fill your jug. A person would bring a jug from home and fill it up at the store, and then the law changed to you could no longer do that. You had to have a clean, fresh jug.
Sanitary.
Part of the regulation. So that we started end of the 40s with some bottling, and again it was bulk kind of wine in bulk sizes. We weren't bottling in 750s. In fact, even that changed. It wasn't 750s or metric in those early days. It was gallons or half gallons.
Right.
And then we converted to metrics later on in the time frame.
Yeah. Well, and was that all the bottling done by hand, I'm assuming?
Oh yes, all done by hand. There was some early equipment, but everything, they would have spouts and you put a gallon jug up under it and fill.
And then would you then deliver that somewhere, or were people just buying the jugs of wine if they came to visit you here on property?
Some would come and visit, but also we would deliver. We started going into San Francisco and restaurants and shops and just about anywhere. If you wanted it, we could get it to you.
Yeah. Because I'm just imagining eating dinner at a restaurant in San Francisco, and they don't bring the jug over to the table, do they? Or they put it in a decanter?
Yes.
Carafes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And or I guess they would serve it if you got a glass of wine. They wouldn't. It wouldn't be out of a bottle. It would be out of the jug.
It's a draft.
Yeah,
just like a beer.
Yeah, I know. I mean, I think that they used to just pour them into carafes, and I'm sure it would get to a point where they would probably break it down into larger jugs. I mean, there's all sorts of old glass containers around, and you can still buy them at Beverage People. There must be 8-gallon glass carboys, and they have now they have a rubber coating over them. So they probably had
the wicker baskets around them and stuff.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. They must have used stuff like that because you can't have a barrel just. I mean,
the wicker looks very Italian too, doesn't it?
Did you see that? Friend of the podcast, Patrick Cappiello is doing Isn't he doing something with some those old timey Chianti wickers or something like that?
I think he teased that when he was on the show that he was doing that. So.
And then it'll inevitably end up with a candle in it on someone's table.
Yeah, some girl's dorm room. Yeah.
But his will have like a skull on the label,
Right.
not like,
Changes colors when the temperature is different. Yeah.
So what? And I think another thing that sort of blew my mind was that these wines that you're producing and selling don't have a vintage on them,
No vintage.
which seems crazy to people now, right? But
Yeah. Oh, but that was very typical. Nobody, you made well, and you didn't want to necessarily hang on to that wine too long either, because it wasn't, wasn't probably filtered very well or
Right.
very stabilized. So
Yeah.
you consume from year to year.
yeah, you weren't selling to collectors. You were selling to people that were just drinking it day to day.
People had with their meal, and it wasn't just once a day. It was at least lunch and
Breakfast, lunch, and
little,
dinner.
a little bit in the morning too, but usually it was white wine in the morning, and then changed to reds at lunchtime and dinner. So
Yeah. So what were the white grapes that you had planted out here?
back then it would have been something called Golden Shastlas, which is I think a Palomino, and there was. Later on it was some French Colombard, no longer grown, Sauvignon Vert, not.
Now, what is Sauvignon Vert? I don't.
It's an offshoot of Sauvignon, but it's actually a different grape, and you no longer see that. It wasn't as distinctive. It was the same as Golden Shastlas. Were not very distinctive wines, but it was a lighter wine. So
Right.
yeah.
When we were talking to Julie earlier about when you see those old bottles that said Burgundy, now we assume that was Pinot Noir, but that wasn't necessarily the case.
Oh, it had no connection to Burgundy.
Or the one that
Basically,
said,
the bottle shape was burgundy, right?
right? Or the one that said Chablis, like I remember,
Yeah.
seeing
It's not the finest Chardonnay you could
was
get.
not the finest Chardonnay. So, what was the distinction between a claret and a Burgundy?
Well, I think that probably in the beginning there wasn't any distinction, but then later on, for some reason, Burgundy was more trendy than claret, and it ended up being claret would be a little lighter wine than the Burgundy. And
Okay.
it didn't have any regulation to it, so it.
and claret was more of a British term, I think, right? That was the Brits used to like to buy clarets from Europe. Right. I believe that's what I.
Well, and that's why I think of claret as being Bordeaux varietals, and I think of Burgundy as being, Burgundian varietals. But I don't know if that.
But there was a whole bunch of Zinfandel in those Burgundies.
There's probably Zinfandel in both of them. to be
Oh,
honest.
for sure.
And then, what was the first year that you guys actually put Sonoma County on the labels here?
That was in the 50s, mid 50s, probably about 55, 56. We started with using Sonoma. Before that, it was always California. Everybody, regardless of where it was from, it was California.
So at that point in the 50s, if we flash forward to that, had it evolved to distribution, or was it still all done within your own family's company?
Well, we did have direct from the family's company here. We didn't have a distributor at that time.
So at that point, if you were selling it out of state, someone from the family was going out and selling it out of state? Or would people come to you looking for it?
Well, somewhat, but mostly it was pretty much within the state.
It was,
We didn't go out of state for quite a while.
Right,
Yes. So.
Yeah, I think it wasn't until the 60s or something that you maybe crept out of California. a
Right.
little
We
bit.
started to move the borders out a little
Yeah.
bit more. So yeah.
Well, and whose idea was it to put Sonoma County on there, and what was the thinking behind it?
Well, it was probably my brother. Probably mostly had that in mind. It was to give it a little bit of distinction and separate it out from grapes from some of those other regions that are.
Well, so okay, you saying that, it makes me think Yeah, was there
smirk?
was there some sort of bias, like if people were getting grapes from Central Valley or from Lodi or from someplace else, was there an impression that that wasn't as high a quality as Sonoma fruit?
I think it definitely was true that if they were, they probably had made homemade wines from Sonoma County or different regions, and they found that it was, more flavorful, more intense than some of the higher production areas. And some of those areas, you get down southern areas, they weren't really into the wine grapes so much as they were into Thompson seedless and some of those things.
Was they the first? You're the first people to put Sonoma County on a bottle, or was other people doing that around the same time?
We were one of the first. I think there was the only one other I recall was Hansel.
Okay. Right around that same
Sonoma.
time.
Yeah, about that. I think we were the next there.
I mean, I feel like that was kind of the time where quality became a focus for wineries. I mean, not that quality wasn't always the focus, but they were trying to, just what you said, distinguish themselves. Would you say that was the era?
Yes,
When
I
it
think
really
that was a
started
started it, and then also getting into the varietals. Even if it was only Zinfandel, at least it was different than the Burgundy, and then starting a little later, starting planting some of the other varietals.
I mean, Bruno Benziger would like to probably take credit for all of that.
Fighting varietals.
Right. Yeah. But no, it was there well before that.
I'd like to focus a little bit on the difference in the agriculture and how you grew back then and how it is now. I mean, we saw a sustainable sign out in front. The vineyards look great. But how were you farming here back in the start in the 20s when you were here, and then in the 50s and beyond?
Yeah, well, it was definitely different. For one, just the cultivation was by horses. And that's what I remember, that we had 3 or 4 horses for cultivation. And that was up until we didn't get our first tractor till late in the 40s. So before then it was all...
Well, what does that mean exactly? So does that mean that you were using them for tilling, or using them when you're picking the grapes, you're loading them up with the grapes?
Both that way. The tilling, the plowing, and then also you would tow a little sled through the vineyards and the pickers would put the boxes onto the sleds, and the horse would pull it. So
and were you doing cover crops and beneficial things back then?
There was some cover cropping, maybe not quite in the really early times. That kind of developed a little bit maybe into the later 50s and 60s when people got more into trying to do better with the vines than just letting it grow.
Right.
Yeah.
And fertilizers and things like that, nitrogen into the soil.
The horses.
Yeah. There you
A lot of that, right? Okay, good.
It was definitely organic.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I guess I think what John's also wondering about is, like, at some point we went from organic fertilizers to what do they say, petrochemical, fertilizers, and it kind of all changed. And I think that was like
post-war, right?
Post-war. That's where things, they tried to do things. Well, you tried to save a buck, right? Like, farming's always been hard. And it's certainly, when you're doing what you guys were doing, it's always been hard. So I think that's what led down to, what we now call conventional farming. And it's interesting to see it all kind of swinging one way or another.
And back again, right?
Yeah. So when you grew up here, did you ever leave and go explore the world, or get a job doing something else, or could you talk about that kind of
like what you were expecting, what the expectations were, the youngest of 4?
Right.
Well, it was different. I did have just to go back to my earlier times, I did a little traveling courtesy of the U.S. Army. And so I got to explore wine regions of Germany, and so that was that. And I did go to college for a few years, and so I did have some outside development there.
And where did you go to college?
I went to St. Mary's College in California. Yeah. Study economics, so that's
Go Gales.
yeah. There you go, and
Moraga, California.
right. So that was kind of my early time. Although I do remember one of my thoughts during that time is, was there ever going to be a continuity to the wine business? Because I could see that the people that were drinking wine were the old Italians, old Frenchmen, and I didn't see my generation, which was 20 years old, drinking a lot of wine. So it was kind of introduction level of beer and other drinks.
And it's the same
story,
thing today, right?
Same story the crow told me. It's the only one he knows.
So,
And everybody looks at it now and goes,
When will young people start drinking wine?
yeah. It takes time.
It's all the old Italians still drinking wine.
yeah, well, true.
We need more Italian. Yeah, and how did you guys, between you and your brother, why was it that he was the winemaker and you ended up being the sales and marketing guy?
Well, he was the older, so he was into the production end of it earlier on, and then as we developed a little bit more of our own bottling, then we needed a guy to do the wine sales or
Last man in.
or the
Go sell this, Jim.
or the administration too. So if we divided out, it just happened to.
So, in your mind, is it harder to make good wine or sell good wine?
Well, it's a good question. It depends on who you ask. The winemaker thinks it's easy to make the wine and should be able to sell it very easily. And then the salesperson said, "Well, you got to make a better wine, or you got to make what the public wants." And so it's a combination, and it's each in its own way.
I'd love to hear those conversations. Be a fly on the wall for that one. So, make a better wine. It's what the public wants.
Right. Well, and your dad, I don't think, went to any kind of like school to learn how to make wine. He was just basically a home winemaker that figured it out.
Yeah.
So that you're not taking samples and sending it out to a lab or anything. So
Lab.
right. And you're not buying yeast to bring in to kick off fermentations and stuff, right? Everything's just done naturally. And if something goes wrong,
Blend it away. Remember, non-vintage.
It wasn't. It didn't have a real structure to the winemaking process, but it did develop into the later '50s. People, as it got more into the wines of the world, then started getting into the analysis. And there is a company in Berkeley called Berkeley Yeast Labs, and they would do analysis for you. So we started getting in, and that was mostly when my brother got involved. Before then, my father really had the old natural winemaking ways. So,
right.
yeah.
Well, and then at some point, you and your brother decide or I don't know if it was a decision you made or your dad made, that he was going to get out and you guys were going to take over.
As my dad was getting on years, and so he was, getting towards retirement, and we were obviously older. So then my brother had pretty much taken over all the winemaking, and my father was really not involved anymore in that. So then we just progressed and tried to make the changes along the way to.
Well, yeah. Was there something?
How'd that go?
Yeah. Was there something that you guys wanted to do, but when your dad was here, he thought it wasn't a great idea?
He would kind of go along with my brother to make changes, and so it wasn't like they at each other's heads about you got to change or not. It was more, my brother was really led the way, and he had done went to some classes at Davis, and so they helped for a little modernizing the technology.
Right.
I mean, it's family business, Sam. You know what a family business is like. I worked for family businesses, but you guys are still a family business, and that's what's so awesome. I mean, Julie, you're a partner now, right?
President.
I mean, you guys are all, and you have next generations coming in, and it's awesome after this amount of time. There's not that many of you guys, so.
Yeah, well, it's still under debate there sometimes. But anyway, we continue on. That step came from my father and to my brother and I, and then of course to the next generation. Yeah. And so
I mean, we see it, like, family wineries go away. You always think that it would never happen, but it does happen. Certain amount of people don't want to be in the business, and there's no one there to take over, and it's sad, but it's the realities of it, right? Yeah. So
no, it's not easy. It's not easy.
Yeah.
So.
And there's more people, right? And so, you almost have to hope that some people do want to go on and do their own thing, right?
Somebody be a doctor, a lawyer, or something.
Definitely need some lawyers.
Someone start a tech company.
Yeah, exactly.
They can fund the winery.
I mean, just counting all these new barrels that you're sitting in front of, Bart.
Right.
Somebody's got to fund this stuff.
You have a beautiful facility here. This is amazing.
Well, it goes back quite a few years. Developed very slowly to original buildings, and this particular building we are now is in the 70s, early 70s that we built this. Yeah. And so.
Yeah, we saw a little bit of your library collection in the other room over there.
Yeah, we had to restrain ourselves from digging in.
There's some fascinating bottles back in there. So when did you guys kind of see a trend in the wine industry where you decided we're going to put varietals on there, we're going to have vintage, we're going to have the area on there, and then sort of get out there and start competing with the only people I can assume you were competing with would be French at some point?
There was some California wineries starting to get into the varietals and getting away from the generics, and so we kind of felt that was going on. So we saw that there wasn't going to be a future in just selling a wine called Burgundy or Chablis. So
right.
It had to be, and those brought more value to the vineyard too, and to the wine themselves. So if you could basically upgrade.
Yeah. Well, in Cabernet, did you then plant Cabernet, or were you buying Cabernet from someone else?
We actually we planted some in 1965, but we'd also purchased some grapes in before then. I actually purchased some grapes from Fetzer. Started some, and Robert Young out in Alexander Valley was one of the early planters of. I'm talking about Cabernet Sauvignon.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
I have a question for you as a som. Do you know when the imports really started to come to America?
I have no idea. I know that for the longest time, we were drinking primarily sweet wine here in the United States. And so it was like Madeira. Even the signing of the Declaration of Independence, when you think back to that time, they were all toasting with Madeira. That was sort of the palate of people.
It travels better.
That's a good point too, right? Yeah, I imagine.
Well, that is a good point. Actually, the production in California of what we call sweet wines or dessert wines were more production up till about 1961, 62. Overall production.
Okay.
Greater in higher alcohol wines than the our table wine.
And that makes sense also.
And I think, well, you kind of talked about it. I think a big shift started to happen when all these guys started coming back from Europe after World War II, and they were in Europe, and they were in France, and they were in Italy, and they were in Germany, and they were drinking the local wines, which were totally different, more what we think of now as far as, wine production. And as those guys started coming back here and, starting families and having businesses, that's kind of what they were looking for. I think that's what really drove a lot of that shift, right?
Yeah. I think it really introduced different wines than what they were used to, the homemade wines, and so it did have an impact. And I think as people travel too, after you got into the late 50s or 60s, and traveling, encourages the different foods and different wines.
I don't want to just wax over the two wines that we're having. And the Sauvignon Blanc was a 22 Sauvignon Blanc, Dry Creek Valley, named after the original founders. Is that correct?
Right. This is our new label that we've just
and I don't know if you guys know this. The new label was designed by a friend of the pod.
Oh, is this a Gato Rivera joint?
Yeah. So shout out to those guys. I've only seen a couple of them from a distance. I love it. It seems like it's you guys. It seems grounded. It seems like,
and the
awesome.
label actually is very Shen Blue, isn't it?
Got a little bit of that,
but that blue in the oak tree. Well, it's not an oak tree.
And the old label and all the different iterations of it have always been kind of iconic and beautiful. But this is just really, really nice.
Great wine.
Yeah, kind of like have Tim Gatto's voice in my head from that show, breaking down why he chose each part of this, and kind of spreading it out and cleaning it up. And the first thing that I saw when I saw this bottle was the family owned since 1927. Before I even saw anything else, and I think Tim would take that as a win for sure. Yeah. Shout out, Tim. I'm sure you'll listen sometime in the next few weeks.
Well, part of it was also that. The name is not an easy name, Pedroncelli, so it's a pretty big name. So
Google knows it.
Just
our Googles we've trained that algorithm to pronounce all these Italian things.
I didn't mean to
no, it's okay. But we wanted to focus in on the name is the main thing there. So
I guess that's right. I mean, those of us that grew up here, we're very familiar with Pedroncelli. It's not. We can say Gunluck Bunchu. Pedroncelli is not a stretch for us. And that Sauvignon Blanc has been. I don't know how long I've been drinking that Sauvignon Blanc. Has that? When did you guys start making Sauvignon Blanc?
Oh, this is probably into the 25, 30 years now that we've been making it. I forget exactly which timing is of it, but quite a while. It's it's 30s.
It's delicious.
Weren't you? This is what we talking about. This is what like Dan Costa be like drinking out of coffee mugs as shifties at the restaurant back in the day or something.
I remember whether it was Patrick Capiello or Dan Costa, but I think it was
Dan Costa.
I think it was Dan saying that he was working at a restaurant in Healdsburg as a server or a busboy or something, and he said that Pedroncelli Sauvignon Blanc, they would just, it was always sitting on ice because it was something they poured by the glass, and so they would just fill up coffee cups, and he said through his whole shift. That was like his favorite thing was this. He has great memories of that.
I could have kept drinking that for the whole podcast for sure. It'd have been fine. Coffee, like.
Was it? I know some people go back and forth, especially really established labels like yours, about changing the label, and was that ever a concern for you, changing it? And
oh, sure. Yes, we definitely had discussions about changing it, and I always felt like, well, the name was, as I say, kind of difficult, and we wanted to make sure we get the name out there and continue that, because if you recognize the name on an old label, then pretty soon you get the fancy colors or something, and then is that the same people?
Right.
So I think continuity is good part. So, but you also have to change. So the new generation. I guess we'll give that to them.
Well, Julie, do you want to talk about a little bit of that process for yourself? I don't.
Sure.
Yeah, I don't mean to put you on the spot, but
that's fine.
Yeah.
No, I'm happy to talk about it. It was a process. What we wanted to do, and working with Tim and Antonio and everybody at Gato Rivera, was to tell our story in a different way, and by their by use of the image. Wish that everybody could see it while we're talking, but by the use of the
There'll be
image,
pictures on social media and stuff.
Oh, great, perfect.
And check out the website. I'm sure we'll shout it out in a minute.
Yeah. And but by use of that image, what it does is it does tell part of there are 4 in the series, and it tells a little bit of our early story in each one of them. So with the Sauvignon Blanc, it told the story of our founders, Giovanni and Julia. It also tells a story about how our winemaker makes the wine. In the center, there's a tree that has 2 trunks that are twisted. It represents my grandparents, the deep roots in Dry Creek Valley here. But it also tells the story of Montse Reese, our winemaker, picking at 2 different times. So we have 11 acres of Sauvignon Blanc. So this is all estate. And she'll pick one side, which is one block, a week earlier than the other one. And in doing that, she gets both sides of the Sauvignon Blanc grape. She gets that grassiness, but she also gets that tropical fruit side that with a little more ripeness. And the two are different blocks. They create different styles of wine. So by picking them about a week apart, she gets that nice depth. She says she does not want to make a monolithic Sauvignon Blanc. So this really grabs both sides of the grape. And that's why I love this label. And it tells our story in a unique way by pulling in just different aspects of our labels from the 50s forward. I mean, it just, to me, I can pull apart and tell you which one. But what I do love is what they did is the Pedroncelli on the label is our block lettering. And they took it. That is their own. That's our font, so to speak. So they really, it's history, not only on the label, but in the actual font itself for Pedroncelli.
So did they send it over as like a font book that you can write a letter in on? If they haven't done that, I'll make sure that happens.
I'll have to, yeah. Maybe there will be a Pedroncelli font now.
There you go.
Instead of a century.
All caps, bold.
Sans serif.
So now who's making your wine?
Yeah, exactly. It's Italian. You're not screaming. You're just no louder.
So who's making your wines?
Montse Reese. She's been with us since the 2007 vintage as assistant winemaker with my uncle. My uncle had more than 60 vintages under his belt before he left us. And that's quite a legacy here at Pedroncelli. We've only had 3 head winemakers in our 96 years of history. And my grandfather first, my uncle second. And Montse began as winemaker. She's assistant winemaker until 2015 when she became our winemaker after my uncle passed. And she has done a great job interpreting the house style, but also making it her own. So she's from Spain, and she started there, went to university there, came over. I'll just give you a quick history. Went to Gloria Ferrer and fell in love with California and stayed. And so she's been here since, I think, 1999 or so. And then went to Rodney Strong and Ferrari Carano. And then my uncle and dad hired her in 2007.
It's amazing you've only had 3.
3 winemakers in 96 years.
Yeah. That's great.
And that's 60 vintages. That doesn't mean running off and working half a year somewhere else. It's 60 vintages complete. 60
vintages as winemaker? Right. So, and spent his whole life like you have in these vineyards and in this winery, right? When we actually break down the property a little bit, you talked about there's 11 acres of Sauvignon Blanc, kind of what it is now and how that's evolved over those 96 plus years.
Yeah, we've gone through some different varieties that were planted. At one time, we had Gewürztraminer, and we even had Chardonnay planted in some of these vineyards. But we're a little further north, maybe a little bit warmer. So for those varieties, we felt better suited to Sauvignon Blanc in the region. And that's what we've tried to do. Pick the variety for the specific, whether it's the hillside with Zinfandel or some of the lower land for Cabernet. We try to suit it to the soil and some of our climate that's a little bit more unique here than some of the other areas for those varieties.
And then how many acres of old vine is there?
We have about 100 acres altogether. And most of them, they have been replanted, but probably mostly 30, 40 years for the red varieties.
Okay.
A little bit less for the white, the Sauvignon Blanc.
Yeah.
Well, I just noticed what we were drinking. Will you talk about this? This is the Zinfandel. This is the mother clone. And what does that mean to you?
Well, that's kind of from the original plantings of Zinfandel here. And we also, some of the ones that have been replanted, we've taken the budwood from the old and started the new vines with. And so we kind of going back to those original plantings to the most extent. So and we call it somehow, or there's somebody mentioned that this was from the old block or the mother block, and so that's how we gave it that name. Yeah.
And so you have original plantings on the property still from.
There's a small amount of the original planting, but it's dwindled down to where we still harvest it, but it's not enough to really maintain a separate bottling.
Right.
Yeah.
So is this established as the Pedroncelli clone of Zinfandel? Has that been sort of sussed out over the years? Because I imagine it's going back to the plantings that your parents bought, so nobody knows where that clone came from, right?
But we claim it as our home, so I guess
so. That's yes.
Yeah.
All right, there you go.
So, I mean, but again, it's that thing about the difference between a clone and a field selection. So, this would be the Pedroncelli selection, right? Like,
Can anybody do tracing on that genetically and determine what and where, Bart?
I think I don't think you can get that far.
Okay. You can
There's
figure
genetics.
out varietal, but
Okay.
That said, I'm sure that if you took one of those vines, especially that's been grafted a couple of times, and because you graft off the best looking ones, then when you put a Pedroncelli 3rd, 4th generation clone of Zinfandel versus the Martini clone from Monterey. So there's probably to a trained eye noticeable differences in the way the vine grows, the berries taste, and ultimately what the wine tastes like will totally sort of as that missile selection works its way through starts to change.
Well, and I think you always selected the budwood was from healthy vines,
Right,
the wines that were
vines.
really growing well or producing good fruit, and you kind of eliminated if there were kind of vines that were suffering. Right. So,
yeah.
So, Jim, have you seen a sort of a ebb and flow of Zinfandel in California over the years with popularity? And just to tell you, we always sort of hope as Californians, as native Northern Californians, that Zinfandel never becomes too popular because we like that we can get a nice quality wine at a decent price since we're all daily wine drinkers. But was it when it stopped being a field blend and sort of became Zinfandel? What has sort of the market been for Zinfandel over the years?
well, we've had a market for it, although some of it has been a little taken over by some of the new plantings, the Cabernet Sauvignons and the Pinot Noirs. Yeah. But there's still, I think, an identity to this area for Zinfandel growing, Dry Creek Valley especially. Yeah. And so I think that it's recognized by some of the wine consumer that enjoys it. And there's something to be said about a Zinfandel. It's has a little more fruit forward than a Cabernet. You get that berryness to it, and I think can be even more enjoyed than some of those other red
Right.
wines.
Well, I've heard you say even too when you go out in the vineyard that just tasting a Zinfandel grape off the vine is a much more pleasurable experience than any of the other grapes.
Yeah, that's a grape that you can actually enjoy eating as comparison to a Cabernet or some of the others.
Right.
They don't taste great, or they don't have that berry flavor to them.
All skins and stems.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
Skins,
there
skins
you
and
go.
seeds. Sticks and stems. Wait, seeds and stems? Wait, that's
Down to seeds and stems again. Yep.
Well, and it's interesting that we see a lot now of younger winemakers wanting to make Chenin Blanc,
Yeah.
French Colombard, Trousseau Gris. They want to sort of go back to these things that were planted before, which is interesting because such a shame is that we've ripped a lot of these vineyards out, and now people are going to want to revisit those. But I think that's part of why they want to revisit is because it's not widely planted or widely distributed. But I don't know if you've seen that out there. We notice in bottle shops and on shelves now that it seems to be a resurgence of some of these old varietals that we used to drink, but I haven't seen in a long time.
Yeah, true. We used to make a lot of Chenin Blanc, and we kind of went to change the formula a little bit with going to Chardonnay. But there's a place for those other wines. They have all distinct character to them. So yes, let's grow something a little different. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, and I mean, it using Chenin in general. I mean, the amount of people have jumped on the Chenin train in the past, 5 years. It's amazing.
Does Mark still make
there's
Chenin?
Yeah.
there's not that
Art
much.
makes Chenin?
Yeah, we need people to plant some more Chenin, folks.
Do you think Dry Creek's a good area for Chenin Blanc?
No idea, but I would gladly.
Yeah.
No, there's the Chenin grown over there on West Dry Creek Road or on Dry Creek Road that what's his name makes. That's the one vineyard here, Leo Steen. That's a Dry Creek Chenin.
Okay.
But that's the only one that I know of, at least at this point.
Yeah.
I mean, you'd think that warmer places with big berry varieties
Yeah.
kind of go hand in hand. So,
I mean, I in the Loire, it's all as you go up the valley, the style of the wine that they make from Chenin changes, right? And so the cooler, it's from cooler to warmer area.
Yeah.
But enough about Chenin. Let's get back to it.
Back to Zen?
Yeah. Well, this has really been awesome. What's something looking forward that you wonder about the wine industry, or something that you're excited about in the wine industry?
Well, I think part of it is the continuity in our family is to continue it, and I think there are concerns about whether the new generation, takes to the consumption of wine like maybe some of the older generations, and so that's a concern, and some of the trends are a little bit come and go kind of quickly, and so since we've been here a long time, we want to stick with something that will continue. And
I mean, aren't you glad you're not trying to start a winery right now?
For sure, yes.
Yeah. And what are you doing in your free time? Are you hanging out here in the tasting room and?
No,
keeping the kids in line, right?
I show up occasionally, but I'm at home with my wife, and we're kind of enjoying the times, and I watch Bloomberg stock reports and that kind of thing. But yeah,
It's been a pretty good year for that, hasn't it?
not bad. I watch my retirement account, so
I just saw that the other day. I got my 401k
making
thing
money.
in the mail, and I said I'm making 12.6% on my investments. I
Isn't
didn't
that
know that
nice?
was a thing.
Yeah, it is.
Everyone says that, Joe Biden's turning the economy into the crapper.
No. Bidenomics are working.
Maybe I'm watching the wrong channel.
Maybe everyone on your podcast that you listen to over there, Joe Rogan Jr.
No, it's there. Everything seems quite healthy at this moment. Quite frankly,
Yes,
heading in the right direction.
we're going with that.
Yeah, exactly.
Until it doesn't.
Yeah. What about you, Julie? What are your thoughts, on the wine industry now, and what's something that you're like excited about?
Oh, I think, like my dad was saying, there's always challenges. Yeah. There's challenges no matter what decade we're talking about, and so there will be challenges going forward.
With 10 decades of business experience here at Pedroncelli, I'm sure you can look back and see the ups and downs, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I used to say, I watched John and my dad ride the waves, because literally that's what you do. You ride the waves of whatever. It's the economy, it's the, oversupply, undersupply, what Mother Nature gives you, all of that, everything, it all comes together. And that's why wine is such an interesting thing to be in, because you never know what's around the corner. But for the future, I think it's exciting to look at, we're starting some replanting. I'm excited about that because we're talking about what do we want to replant with. So we're going to be rejuvenating our vineyards. We're taking a look at our 10-year plan. We're actually looking at growth rather than shrinking. So that's all part of what we're looking at in the future. So it's an exciting time. Whether the fifth generation of the Pedroncelli family is going to be involved, we don't know. They're 16 and under. So we have no idea
legally,
where
they're not allowed to be involved.
Legally, they're not. Yeah,
legally,
and so that's the other thing that always comes up with family business succession is the succession part.
Right.
Are family members interested enough to keep it going, or just to be part of it? And hey, I was told when I was in high school that I wasn't necessarily guaranteed a job here. I've now been here for 38 years. So
still waiting for that other job offer.
Hey, my major was English with a writing emphasis. I wasn't planning on being in the wine business, but I do like to say a liberal arts education is probably the best thing you can have if you're in the industry. But so the future is looking good. It's just, again, you just have to understand that there will always be challenges, and that's just something that comes along with the whole thing.
Right.
Yeah,
Such
exactly.
is life.
And you used to spend quite a bit of time out on the road selling, right? I mean,
Yes.
as you have.
Yep.
Are you still doing that, or are you too many things around here now? Is someone
A lot
taking
more
that for
things
you?
going on here. I'm not. The pandemic ended it quickly. So I spend a lot of time on Zoom sales meetings and reaching out to our wholesalers, our trade partners that way. I may travel a little bit, but not nearly as much as I used to.
And how many states? Because our listeners are all over the place. And you're a winery that, I mean, a lot of wineries that we have on don't have distribution, but they can probably get out and find your wine in stores. How many states are you guys in?
Well, we're in almost all of the states. But when I say that, not all of our wines are in all of it. So I would, things like our Mother Clone Zinfandel and our Sauvignon Blanc, our wines you're likely to find out there.
Okay.
But our website is a great resource.
Absolutely.
But we are distributed around in the major, I would say major markets have the most of our wine, and then all those.
But the
smaller
ones
wines.
that they'll most likely see are the Mother Clone Zin and the Sauvignon Blanc.
Yes, and our Cabernet, our Three Vineyards Cabernet, which will soon be named Brothers Mark in honor of my dad and my uncle.
Awesome.
But that's a change coming up in the fall.
Yeah.
With the Gato Rivera design. That was their best work.
Nice.
Really. Yeah. But anyway, that's to come. Yeah. That's to come.
Awesome.
And what is your production here?
Well, in a non-drought year, we were at about 50,000, but it's been lower than that in the last couple of vintages. We're looking at about an average crop this year, so we'll probably get up to. And we've been sourcing more fruit and things like that to kind of keep because, like I said, we're looking at growth. Rather than shrinking. So, so I'd say 50,000 is about, but that's the big end of small.
we talk with a lot of people who do 3,500 or 500 or 5,000 cases. So, it's just, and how many, what Joel do? Got?
A lot.
Just a lot. Huh?
Rhymes with what?
Yeah.
And what's 16,600?
I don't know.
Okay.
You have to count. Again,
Depends how much
depends-
Phil sends them.
Right, it depends on what he can't find somebody else to buy. That 2,500 to 3,500. Again, it's the droughts and crop size has a lot to do with it. What we end up bringing in, we're usually trying to hover around 3,000. Just as friend of the podcast, Craig Hazler used to say to me when I told him that number, just enough to ruin the rest of your life.
Right.
So let's talk about that. The drought year and a great year. How bad was it up here over the last 3-4 years?
Well, it was unusual and different because not only was it drought, we had the fires that really impacted us.
In 20,
in
you
20,
guys were.
yeah.
And 19 also?
No, 20.
20. Well, you were.
The prior fires didn't impact us before 20, and then so we lost crop. Some of the vineyards
So they were really close. They did burn right over the hill, huh?
yeah they were
Wow.
just over, and a lot of the smoke, and everybody's unready, I guess, to handle the concerns of the smoke taint, and so we did lost quite a bit of production there.
Did you do any?
Oh no, we still did.
20
We still did, and
I saw Skeptic and looked at the label and I was like, oh, and it's clean. There's nothing
perfect.
there.
Yeah.
And actually, I guess I shouldn't say, but I think it's better than I thought it was going to be.
That's a good thing.
Well, I think everybody feels the same way when you got to say it, but it's hard to say it.
Yeah.
One of the other reasons why we're here is we had Glenn Proctor on. And Glenn is a big fan of yours, and so and their property is just across the valley from here.
Okay,
right.
And so I think I know it burned right up against them. So yeah, but that's close.
That's not something you can really prepare for, is it?
No, definitely not.
How
Well, I
ferocious
think we're
it is.
doing better now because people are clearing the potential fire zones, and so it's better. But you can't.
Well, we had a controlled burn down by the racetrack, and everything blew right into Sonoma, and people just freaked out completely.
I freaked out. I live in Roner Park, and as I came down into Sonoma, it's just you get that feeling.
Right.
You feel it in your body of, oh no, what's going on?
I mean, we were doing hourly updates for people because they were calling the radio stations. Like, what's going on? So,
Well, and that was
For the control burn?
yeah,
Really?
that was
just a couple of weeks
that
ago.
was Fire Forward, Sasha Burlman.
Yeah, that's
we'd
what
had
I was wondering.
We'd had
Yeah.
on the show, and we can talk about things that went wrong with that. I think mostly it was information.
Right.
That went wrong with that. I mean, we're all on Nixle alerts, and I feel like I get a Nixle alert every time there's a traffic light out in Napa County, and you get nothing from Sonoma County.
Crash on
and,
Silverado Road.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that fire, probably if you asked Sasha, did exactly what it was supposed to do.
Right.
And got smoky at the end when it hit the wet grass and burned itself out. And then the wind was blowing in with the fog off the bay and blew that smoke right up the valley. Doesn't make any of us feel any better,
Right.
but imagine that on the the score list of the scoreboard of a prescribed burn. No one probably checked all the boxes, except for the telling us it was happening part.
Yeah, well,
I
unfortunately.
heard someone say that's really irresponsible of them, and I'm like, well, what's irresponsible about it? That the wind blew the wrong way. That's all.
Actually, no. Like I'm telling you, the wind blew the right way.
Right. Well,
right.
yes, you're right. But it blew it into that. Yeah.
That wind coming off the bay and off the ocean is the wind that is brings in the fog and is heavy and moist and did exactly what it was supposed to do. It's the wind out of that would have blown it towards Marin.
Right.
that is the scary wind.
Yeah, but I mean,
It blew the wrong way if you live in Sonoma.
right, and if you don't understand like how important control burns are, right? You know, so anyway.
So, Julie, I'm curious, Julie and Jim, of our listeners, if they go out to the store and they see these wines, but I want them to get the wines that they can't get in the stores. So I want to know what your favorites are that you guys sell that are on your website, but that aren't readily available, because that's the stuff they always want.
Yeah, and also talk a little bit about, you guys have a tasting room.
We do.
And some of the things that you guys do here.
Sure. Well, Dad, do you have any other favorites that maybe aren't quite as available out and about?
Well, most of them are available. We have some limited production items that pretty much just direct to consumer or tasting room. And I do like, we have a couple. We have one called Courage and another one called Wisdom. And so I think that reflects some of our thinking here.
Wisdom is the Cabernet?
Yes, it's the Cabernet, and Courage is the Zinfandel.
Oh, we're going to taste some wisdom.
Okay,
All right, you're going to gain wisdom right now in your
Ask and you
mason
shall
jar.
receive, right? Just that simple.
I was ready for you.
That's great.
So yes, and I'd say another little something that we have that's not widely available is our Cabernet Franc.
Oh,
we make a.
There's always a secret Cabernet
Ooh, I
Franc.
hit the sweet spot with that one. We actually have been growing it for quite some time. It has always been part of our Three Vineyards Cabernet Bordeaux blend. And a few years ago, Jim took a bit of it out and we test ran it. And it's a small lot, so it's not available pretty much outside of here. But it's a Cabernet Franc grown in Dry Creek Valley, so you got a little bit more of that kind of cooler climate, that little bit of what our winemaker likes to refer as greenier. So there's that little touch of the greenier in it. But it's a really nice, very nicely made one. So yeah, that's a little something there. Our tasting room, yes. We just went through a little refurb on the outside, so it's very
New
cheery
roof
and inviting.
today, huh?
And we're getting a new roof today, so that's why
we
we're
get to
here
hang out in the barrel cellar.
Volley line room. But anyway, we have plenty of space outside. We have a bocce court. If people want to come and play bocce, they can do that. We've got a patio with great vineyard views, and of course the wines inside are even better. So anyway, come by and visit us. We'd love to have you.
Appointment, walk in.
Both. Yep.
Yeah, and we have friends that are sort of neighbors of yours.
The Frick.
Well, Bill Frick is up the road.
Yes.
And then April and Doug Knoll just down Dry Creek. So come make the drive up here, and you can go
Spend the day.
visit three of our favorite spots.
What was the Frick you used to buy
that's
at
it.
Girl in the Frick?
Yeah, that's it.
What varietal?
Sanso.
Okay, yeah.
Or I don't know how Jim would say it. I'm curious.
I don't know.
Leave that to Bill.
Leave it to Bill.
I love when so when you said, what is it, Carrigan? Because we hear people we've had growers and winemakers on from Lodi that have these pronunciations of some of the grapes, and because everything gets so fancy and French in the restaurants, so we want to say it like Petite Sirah, and then we've heard Petit Sirah.
Well, it used to be Petit Sirah.
Right.
And now it's Petite Sirah.
Right. Okay, I was wondering if Sanso just used to be called Cinso or something. I don't know.
It was referred to as like a totally different varietal. It wasn't. I want to say not Napa Gamay was Valdegay.
Valdegay. That became Valdegay.
Became Valdegay. Yeah. But Cinso, I think, was always called something else, and they realized it was Cinso. I mean, it was like kind of the backbone of Hardy Burgundy. You have Cinso and you have Zinfandel and Petit Sirah, and that was that Burgundy that's over there on that wine library shelf we walked by. I took pictures of.
Yeah. Which we're curious about those, Jim. What are you doing with that library back there? Are you ever offering those to any of your wine club members or podcasters or?
Well, we're I think we have that in mind to do, but some of those on the rack are more for visual, visual appreciation.
Yeah. Are you ever surprised when you go in every once in a while and take a dip into the library and find a find something that's really interesting?
Yeah, well, once in a while we'll pop a 20-year-old and take a, and they've held up very well. You know, obviously aging and softening, but the reds have held well.
Nice.
What was the oldest vintage you saw back there?
I mean, there was stuff going back into the 70s, and when I see early 70s Pinot and Zinfandel, I mean, I get excited.
You should.
Yeah, yeah. And I don't think people think about Zinfandel as one of those grapes traditionally that you would age. But one of my favorite wines that I've ever opened was a '67 David Bruce Zinfandel that I thought. I mean, we opened it up immediately thinking, "Oh, this is probably over the hill," and it was one of the best wines I've had in a long time. So, yeah.
I mean,
Yeah, I think that a lot of times we look at Zinfandel, we usually think about drinking it younger, but it does age. It takes on a little different character. I think it's a little bit more like Cabernet after you lose the fresh fruitiness of it.
Yeah.
So.
Well, and the conversation is actually, I hear it more and more now about Zinfandel being considered to be one of the more like the noble grapes and a food pairing wine. Whereas before you just hear, oh, it goes good with barbecue, at a picnic or something. But I hear more and more sommeliers at restaurants talking about how it's something that they're recommending at Michelin star restaurants.
Yeah,
so,
they're getting serious about it.
Right.
Yeah.
So keep making more of that Zinfandel.
We certainly will.
Yeah.
that mother clone.
This wisdom is right up my alley.
Isn't that great?
Right.
Yeah.
Wow, beautiful stuff. Thank you very much.
Yeah, this is a second-generation Cabernet vineyard. We first planted it in 1965, when Jim was referencing earlier. So yeah, it's a nice one. Yeah, nice estate little spot right off of West Dry Creek Road.
Yeah.
Is that the one where you have the sign on it?
No, that's the other side of the vineyard.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
All right, and Julie, will you just tell people if they want to go on the website and purchase some wines or phone number if they want to come visit you?
Sure.
Yeah.
All right. So the website is very simple: www.pedroncelli.com.
2 L's.
2 L's.
Yeah, let's spell that for those of us listening at home.
PedronCelli.com. And the number to call is 707-857-3531. And we're open 10 to 4:30 daily. And so come by and stop by. We're open every day except major holidays.
Nice.
And it's nice that you can come, if you're just driving down, because my wife and I made a pact when we were driving around France. We would take any turn we wanted to take. And there's always somebody down the road that is making great wine. It might not be, they might not make much of it, but damn, is it good, Yeah. So that's the way to find wine and find wineries. It really is.
Yeah. Jim, can't thank you enough for coming and meeting us today.
Yep.
And Julie.
Yeah.
And Julie. Yeah.
She's the president, man. Come on. Don't mess with her.
She's the one now. So yeah.
And is this the first podcast that you've ever been on?
Probably so. I can't remember another one.
Oh, congratulations.
I've done a Zoom, but not a podcast.
Yeah.
Well, I wanted to wait for the right situation.
right team, huh?
And the
Wow,
right
still in sales.
And I get 0 bars on my phone.
Nah, we're in a bunker here, man.
I was trying to
They
post
disappeared us.
photos on Facebook and Instagram, and it's like, nope.
Wait till you get back to the highway.
I think so.
And then pull over.
Absolutely. I pulled over a couple of times for phone calls this morning. So
Well, thank you guys very much. We really appreciate it. And
Yeah, it's great to get up in this part of Sonoma County.
Yeah.
It was beautiful. It was a beautiful drive.
yeah, it's stunning.
and good luck with the next harvest.
I know.
Number 97 for the Pedroncelli family. Number 96.
Okay, and I gotta. I know we're trying to end the show, but I gotta ask. You guys must be talking about 100, right? What you got something in mind for this?
I mean, we'd be happy to come up and do a show with you.
Right.
Well, we would love to have you.
Party with you.
Yeah, I'm going to let Dad plan the 100th. No, no, we're definitely. We did our 90th, and yes, there will be the plans are going to have to start about now because it's only 4 years away before we reach 100. But that's the cool thing. There's lots of excitement as we reach our 100th.
Well, maybe we can use you to help us plan. We're trying to do a party for our 300th episode, and over 5 years. So we need a party planner, Julie.
Get the wine and
You have to get in line.
The party part down. It's the planning that's the hard part.
Don't forget the corkscrew.
And the lighter. Oh wait, different party.
We know how to get around this. All right.
oh, good.
Shout outs, guys. Anything? You've got a lot coming up. Stanley Mouse, first of all, right?
Well, this will be out by the time the mouse party has happened, but by this time you hear this show, you better have gotten your tickets for Catherine Russell, September 17th. Vinyl Sunday presents our Grenache Day celebration out of the Denmark Street Barn.
So
Catherine
now,
Russell.
is there a real hard number of people who can get in?
We are allowed to have 200 people on the property. We definitely, hopefully the Nellis family isn't listening, definitely exceeded that at our last one. But there's only 200 tickets available for sale. And you got to figure that Phil and Arden's guest list will eat up a fair chunk of those. So Eventbrite, it's on our website.
Get on it.
Catherine Russell, Tony Saunders with the Keystone Band opening up. Mike the Baker and Fiorella Burton, formerly of Edge, doing the food. I think we're gonna get some Sweet Scoops ice cream out there. It's gonna be the event of the year. So it's not quite our 100th birthday party.
Concert of the year.
We're a couple years
Right.
away from planning that one, but
Event of the year until Grenache Day.
well, no, it is Grenache.
That's
Day.
correct.
Oh yeah, that's right. I forgot. It's that same weekend.
It's that weekend.
Sorry.
We turned Grenache Day into a whole 3-day extravaganza.
Yeah.
Because
I did talk to
because we can.
I did talk to Brett George. Don't call me George Brett.
Yes.
On the way up,
The best hitter from Milwaukee, Wisconsin.
and they have their tickets, so they'll be here for.
They bought whether they come or not doesn't matter. They bought tickets. So.
All right, you guys.
All right. Anything else? Brian?
No, that's it.
Okay. Well, thank you, Jim and Julie. What a pleasure to get up here and really take advantage of all your knowledge. And you guys are wonderful. So
Pedroncelli.
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 And drink more wisdom.
There you
More
go.
wisdom. Or Zinfandel.
Occasional courage, too. So.
All right. Well, thanks for listening, everybody. We are the Winemakers. Talk to you next week. Bye.